About to start a war now, second time around, so we doing it in style. It's all elite, not accepting defeat. A lot can change in 1 year, but more can change in 1 week. Believe the hype, the train's leaving tonight.
Championships don't mean shit. These records don't mean shit.
Oh yeah, Roy's filming it.
I don't watch you're listening to all his Eric podcasts. I'm the baddest motherfucker. We're best friends. I'm chucking these straight. Produce somebody who's championships.
Welcome back, All Elite family, to another exciting
Oh yeah,
All Elite podcast.
I don't watch
As always, All Elite Andy, Andrew Kazier, and I am joined by my guest host, co-host, Big Match AJ. AJ, how are things going?
Guest host. I'm the guest host of the podcast.
The guest host, yes.
Things are going good. I've just been grading papers, which I need to get back to once we're done with this. But aside from that,
So you haven't been grading papers by the sounds of it.
You know what? You're not wrong. I should have been doing it more instead of dicking off.
Yep, see? And now here you are, dicking off about AEW for an extra 45 minutes instead of grading papers.
Mm-hmm.
But, hey, I'm not really up to much either myself. I'm getting back into the swing of things with college and shit like that. So just been working on that, working on my actual job, planning out my daughter's birthday, which just passed, and then my girlfriend's birthday, which is coming up. But really not a whole lot going on in the world of Andrew, but there was a whole lot going on in the world of All Elite Wrestling this week. We have crowned new tag team champions. To the surprise of AJ and I, we weren't really expecting Hangman Page and Kenny Omega to come out the tag team champions from AEW, and lo and behold, we have new tag team champions. What were your thoughts on that, AJ?
I liked it. I'm very pro this thing, though they are definitely moving kind of quick now with that heel turn, and I wonder what that means for the tag team titles. But I don't know, nothing wrong with it. They're doing their thing, and I thought the match itself was really, really good. So yeah, I love this.
Absolutely. My only complaint with anything, I think, is just the placement of the match. I totally understand that they've gotten into the habit of throwing these two on first to sort of open your show up really hot. But I feel like they could have established a different trend where it's sort of like would have been storytelling within professional wrestling, where you have your first 2 or 3 weeks of you have a specific match open up or a specific storyline open up your show, and then after 3 weeks at a month or whatever, you close it out in the main event. So you have it open to bring people in for the first 3 weeks and have them really get into it, and then on the 4th week they're already invested to stay for the main event. So I think I was hoping that's where they were going. Instead, obviously, we get this match very early on in the show, the first match of the show, and a title change on a taped show. I didn't love that fact either. Our first AEW title change on Dynamite is on a taped show.
Well, I didn't mind it because I didn't read the spoilers.
Well, even regardless, dude, I mean, and I get that. If you didn't read the spoilers, it doesn't affect you. But in general, from just a standpoint of logical booking, I don't know that that's what I would have done.
I understand.
I guess in their aspect, they would just assume your diehard fans aren't going to spoil it for themselves. So,
yeah.
But nonetheless, a good match, a solid, almost 20-minute match to open up the show. We have the Elite come out to sort of celebrate with them, but Hangman Page dips out to go celebrate with the fans instead. Doesn't really want much to do with the Elite in this celebration.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. He kind of just keeps distancing himself from the Young Bucks more and more, which is kind of weird that he hates the Young Bucks so much, because I watched Being the Elite for fun, I know. And he was like just anti-Young Bucks, not anti-Kenny, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's because Kenny's the one that's feeding him these victories or helping him gain these victories, so it would make sense in that standpoint. And, I like it. I like the storytelling we're getting here.
I do too.
I like this whole story. Again, literally my only complaint, if you will, would have been that I want something new in wrestling, and I think that would be a really cool idea. And you don't even have to be very blunt about it and say every week, but if they just started booking that way, in the sense of every week your first segment is dedicated to whatever a major maybe not even a major storyline, but a storyline you want to get over. You get it over for a couple of weeks and then put it in that main event segment to keep people in. I think it would just be interesting. It's almost like seasonal but very short. So I think that would be cool. But nonetheless, a really cool match, really interesting title change that AEW got. So some people were upset that they referenced the title change on social media, talking about a match that would happen on the Jericho cruise. So if you pay attention to social media, you probably had an idea that this title change was coming.
Yeah.
What you might not have had an idea was coming was Britt Baker apparently turning heel. She beats Priscilla Kelly in about 6 minutes after that tag team match, and she, post-match, gets interviewed by Tony Schiavone, and Britt just gave like a really rough heel, I guess, promo. It was weird because I wasn't necessarily expecting her to turn heel in this way. Maybe you have her attack Priscilla first, like destroy her post-match. Instead, she just runs down Schiavone. What did you think of that?
I thought it was terrible. Not just the fact that, like you said, she's just running down Schiavone, that it was fucking terrible. It was just a bad promo. It sucked. It was one of the worst things that they've done on, not worst things that they've done, the worst thing that they've done on this show, which really there's not too much bad stuff on this show. So it's not the end of the world, but this is by and large the worst to me.
Yeah, I can agree, but in a lot of ways, I don't agree because it made you hate Britt Baker in the way that you're supposed to.
The delivery was so bad.
The delivery wasn't the best, but I guess I just don't get it. I don't get the overwhelming hate for it. I didn't enjoy it, but in listening, because I even went back and watched it again after everyone in our group chat was throwing a huge fit about it, and in listening to it a second time, I was like, wow, this does sound like shit, but it's no worse than any other really bad promo. And at the same time, while she sounded like shit,
fair.
the biggest thing to me was she sounded like a straight up bitch. So I was like, and almost maybe drunk. Like that was what was weird about it. I was like, was she like half wasted or like totally winded coming out of this match, or what was the deal here? So that was essentially my biggest issue or takeaway from that. I didn't think otherwise that there was an issue with the match.
No, the match was fine. Nothing really. Priscilla Kelly looked great. I want to see more of her in AEW. That was my biggest takeaway from all this.
Yeah, I think that she definitely looked good, especially in the short amount of time they allotted for this match. And that's an interesting takeaway I have for this show as well, is they didn't give a ton of time to certain matches, and other matches gave a lot of time to. And that's something a little bit different for AEW in the sense that they usually do about one really long match and otherwise try to keep everything about 10 to 15 minutes. And in this show, they really had about 3 really long matches, I'd say.
Yeah. 2 really, really long matches and the one on just the longer side.
Yeah, we had the Inner Circle defeating the Jurassic Express in about almost 15 minutes. This was another solid 6-man. I do wish that the Jurassic Express had some way picked up the victory here. I think that they really missed the boat with Jungle Boy and any opportunity that they might have had to really introduce him to new fans and make people care about him. For fans who weren't familiar with independent wrestling or the Elite, when you tune into this show, you don't really know who a lot of these guys are or have a reason to care about them. And a group that people can connect with readily is the Jurassic Express, because you have Jungle Boy and Marco, who are smaller. You have Luchasaurus, who's big and can connect with fans as well. And it's just unfortunate that, I think in their minds this match with the Inner Circle would help them, but I don't think it helped very much.
No, I don't think so either. It kind of just took away all that heat that he had from going the distance with Jericho in my mind. But it wasn't the worst thing in the world to me either, though. I don't think it like buried them.
Well, I agree with you 100% in saying that I think it took away the heat that he had gained from that match with Jericho. But in that, I think that's worth saying that it was like the worst thing, in my opinion. Like not the worst thing, but one of the worst things they could have done in this situation, because he was gaining steam off of that non-win, and now they suffer a loss. Even if he didn't take the pinfall, it didn't help. Whereas if you have them pick up a quick victory, you can at least change the narrative for him a little bit. But otherwise, I don't think that they did much to help the Jurassic Express or Jungle Boy in particular here very much.
It's not like Jericho needed to take the pin. That's what upset me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you look at that perspective too, Proud and Powerful. You thought it was a great thing, them being involved in the Inner Circle, but at this point, what good has it done for them to be in this group? They were at one point, especially coming into AEW, considered one of the best tag teams in professional wrestling, and now they've had 1 or 2 really upper level matches and otherwise been consistently paired with Jericho and 6-mans or Sabian and 6-mans. They can't do what they do, and it's tainting them. And then by the time they get an opportunity to be great, it you already have this other look at them. So I don't think that they've killed Proud and Powerful, but I don't think they've done the best job with them either.
I understand that. I don't think they've done the best job with them, but I don't know. I didn't really consider them getting hurt by it though.
Yeah, I don't think they're hurt. I just think they haven't been elevated to a point that they probably should have been at this point.
That's fair.
And that's the biggest issue. But MJF is someone who has been elevated to a point that he should be. They run a MJF versus Cody hype video just explaining the situation of their storyline. Decent little hype video leads into MJF taking on Joey Janela. MJF is able to pick up a victory here despite not having Wardlow by his side. This happens with a distraction from Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford making their way out to the ring ramp, and this distracts Joey. Them making out sends him into he just can't pay attention to what's going on. He ends up suffering a loss here. This was fine.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with this match. I thought it did the job. Joey Janela has a new hairstyle. He's very beach oriented. There's not too much to say about it. I thought they did build up the Joey. This was my favorite way they built up the Joey Janela Kip Sabian feud so far, because those interviews and video packages were not doing it for me.
Yeah, I think that this did help add a little bit to it. I think that it would have helped way more if Joey was an established character, if they had established it makes sense that they could have never really established Joey and Penelope on AEW television, because by the time the company officially started, they were officially separated. Or not the company, I would say television started, they were already separated. So you can't really build them as a couple. It's a lot harder to do that. But if they had built Joey as like a top baby face, or even Penelope been featured a little bit more, or Kip even, like a lot of these, they just feel like it's like if you were watching a TV show and 3 random characters just randomly had a love triangle situation going on. You'd be like, well, I don't really know why I care. Like, yeah, that's fucked up. They did that to that guy, but who knows what he did to her, and who knows, like, so in that aspect, I think that they could have done a little bit more before doing this angle, because I feel like this angle, like, there should be more explained. But otherwise, it wasn't. I'm with you in the fact that it's the best job they've done so far, and I'm glad they're doing something.
Yeah.
But what hurts is you need good promos to really establish a feud like this, and you would need Joey to really feel like he's hurt by losing Penelope, and Joey Janela doesn't have that appeal to him at this point. Like, if he was coming out almost as a Darby Allin type, where he was more depressed, more like, fuck my life, but he's still coming out the same old Joey, which you kind of want, but at the same time, when you have the same old Joey, you don't really care that he lost this girl, because you're like, who the fuck cares? He was never bringing her on TV. He never did, like, so what does it matter?
Yeah, to a new audience, this doesn't make any sense. The only people this really makes sense to are people who have followed
you and me.
Yeah, you and me. Anybody else who followed GCW, but that's about it.
Yes, exactly. And like Joey fans or Kip fans, or like, but even then, these fans, like, these are fans who care about them when they're on TV. But if they were to go back to the independents, they wouldn't probably give a fuck enough to watch what they're doing. So it's like I don't know. So, anyways, we get MJF picking up the victory here. Post match, MJF cuts a promo on Cody. Cody comes down, gets face to face with MJF. MJF reminds Cody that he can't touch him. He goes into his attacking Cody's speech, and then we get Cody saying that, yeah, he can't touch MJF, but the Young Bucks can. So the Young Bucks hit a super kick on MJF, and they say, hey, should we throw MJF in the pool? And just for our boy Joseph, they literally threw MJF in the pool. So that was,
yes, they did.
That was a homage to WCW days, I guess.
Sorry, I was seeing, because I think the ratings might have come in, but anyways, yeah, no, it's a little WCW-ish, which is cool. I liked it. I like that they're doing it.
How many times are we gonna say, well, we're not WCW, but we're gonna do all this WCW stuff and use all these WCW legends?
I don't know. They just did Bash
at
the Beach. Channel. It's not like they're distancing themselves that much.
That's what I'm trying, but they've literally tried to say, like, we're not WCW.
Oh, they're liars.
Fucking carnies is what they are. But it was a good segment, and it was, if you are anti-MJF, and it was a good way around the whole situation. They did a really good job at explaining why Wardlow wasn't there to be involved or to protect his guy. And it also sets up the Young Bucks taking on the Butcher and the Blade. And it makes sense to me, at least, why the Butcher and the Blade wouldn't have made the save, even if they were on the cruise. I would assume they just weren't on the cruise. But if they were on the cruise, why they wouldn't make a save is to get money out of MJF for their services. If you want us to help you, you're going to pay for it. So let him get the shit kicked out of him 1 week, and he'll pay for us to do the dirty work next week. That's how I would look at it. So that's fine.
Yeah, it's all good. I don't know. I don't have too much anything negative to say here. It all is working for me.
Yeah, it's the one storyline you and I have wanted, and the only thing that they could have done better for it was made it last longer until we got to this point. But now that we're here, we're like, fuck it, we love it. So they would have to work really hard to mess it up, and this being Cody's brainchild, I don't foresee that in any way, shape, or form.
I don't think they're gonna, because I think it's gonna be done traditionally in a way that makes sense. So I think it's gonna be good.
Yeah, exactly. And well, that's Cody's thing, dude. If anybody's going to do oh man, you saying that just made me so relieved that this storyline is just going to be fucking straight down the middle. It'll end how it should. There's not going to be any extra wonky bullshit, because Cody of all people has made it clear he's the guy that keeps away from straying from that. And while the rest of the show, including his wife, can get wonky, he hasn't. So. Speaking of, no real Brandy Rhodes on this show.
No Brandy Rhodes, which was refreshing.
We're not allowed to say that, but yeah.
It was nice. There was no awkward promos, no weird segments.
There was an awkward promo.
Well, there was, but there wasn't, and they didn't have a spooky hairless.
There was only one bad promo though. That's where they need to do 2 promos a week, and then everything else is video packages or pre-tapes.
Yeah.
Because if you have more than one bad promo, you have officially given me a bad episode of television. Because of how they pace their promos and stuff. Because imagine a Brandy promo anytime in the second hour after we got that first bad promo. So. Yeah,
you're right.
And that's what happens some weeks. So, after that. Young Bucks throwing MJF into the pool. We get Tony Schiavone. He's interviewing Hangman and Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks just can't stay out of their fucking limelight apparently, because they show up and Hangman makes a remark about winning the tag team titles before the Young Bucks and walks off. So then the Young Bucks are kind of bitter about it. They're like, why would you say that?
Yeah, Hangman does not like the Young Bucks one bit, or it seems like the Elite. But he's tolerating Kenny, which is what's important.
Yeah. And hey, that's great, and I think that it's interesting the way that the Young Bucks were offended by this and all of that, so.
Yeah, it all works. It works well. We're seeing the heel turn still be built. The heel turn's moving a little fast for me now that they've won the titles. I want to kind of linger on that for a little bit before we just jump to the heel turn. But it's been a nice slow burn. Everything's been going well. I don't foresee this going in a bad direction.
And the fair point of that is it makes more sense for them to almost escalate it quickly. We're used to the story being people being mad and then winning the titles, and all of a sudden they're just best friends for 6 months, and then all of a sudden they hate each other again. At least it makes more sense for them to be for Hangman to be yeah, we won the titles, but still, fuck you. This was just me carrying you, or this was me using you to get what I wanted, and otherwise, I don't give a fuck. And I appreciate that fact, and rather than them be oh, we're fake best friends, and then, oh, we lost the titles, and now I'm fucking mad. Nope, Hangman is still an alcoholic. He's still, so if he's really an alcoholic, he's really gonna still kind of be that way, too, in the realistic standpoint of it. So I appreciate that much.
Yeah.
And then from there, we get Chris Jericho joining Excalibur and Jim Ross on commentary. He did a great job on commentary, as he always does. The crowd went nuts for him because it's his cruise, so they sang along to his entire theme song, basically. And that was a cool moment.
Yeah. That was really rad. That's one of the highlights. I'm gonna go back and watch that for sure. Just the whole crowd singing his song.
Yeah, exactly. It was one of the best moments of the show, and it was one of the moments where the crowd was able to really stand out. Like, because it was a loud, great crowd, but they were outdoors, and the audio you're going to lose not being able to encapsulate your crowd was very evident throughout this show.
Yeah.
And so they then went down the match card for next week's Dynamite. We got Jericho, Santana, and Ortiz taking on Darby Allin in the Private Party. So just another opportunity for Jericho to kill somebody's push before he goes on vacation.
Yep.
Then we get the Young Bucks taking on the Butcher and the Blade, and Cody taking on Kip Sabian. So an opportunity for Joey to exact his revenge.
Yeah, we get a little more Kip Sabian, Joey Janela, which is kind of a good sign because it tells us they're not just leaving it in the dust; they're actually focusing on it and building towards it.
Weekly, yes.
Weekly, not bi-weekly. No.
But that's how they've done a lot of storylines and shit, and how
No,
they've
you're
pushed
right.
a lot of people. So I'm glad to see that. I would have liked to have seen any type of Jurassic Express match announced for this card, just to, in that retrospect, keep them consistently on television. Instead, we get Darby in the Private Party, and I literally just feel like this is a repeat of the 6-man we got this week, where they're just going to be a team that should win. I mean, I guess maybe in this case we get Private Party picking up a tag team victory, or they end up pinning Santana or Ortiz, and that's how we get it. But I do also see them trying to lean more into the 6-man thing the last couple of weeks. I think that Kenny's hinted at them doing a 6-man tag team titles down the line, so I think this is them sort of trying to establish that.
Yeah, and I kind of foresee this being Jericho, Santana, and Ortiz looking strong as a 6-man unit or a 3-man unit.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's a decent little match card they've put together for next week. I don't think it's necessarily the home run cards we've had in the past. Even so, we'll have to wait and see if we're gonna get one of those in the next couple weeks. But it still isn't a bad card. Definitely nothing to complain about.
No, not at all.
And then we have our main event, Jon Moxley taking on Pac, so that explains Jericho being out there. These two went for about 17 and a half minutes. I do think it took them a little while to get this thing to kick into high gear. It felt a lot like a WWE television match. That's not a good thing. I don't mean that in a nice way. It did, by the time it got going, it was a pretty good match and was pretty well done. It's not Mox's fault that his finish is a DDT, but it kind of sucks that his finish is a DDT because of how much he also utilizes just a regular DDT in his moveset. So he's just constantly almost doing it throughout his entire match. Otherwise, it was a decent match, but I don't really love the winner either, especially based on the story they had built up.
I mean, I don't mind the winner because that's what I want for Revolution, but it is a little odd that he's going from injured with one eye, working the match with one eye, and then he still beats Pac. It makes Pac look weak.
Yeah, for sure. And they made Pac look pretty weak throughout the booking of the match itself in terms of psychology, with him locking in his finisher and Moxley somehow able to get to the ropes and everything. Like, that was the most annoying thing of this entire match to me, I think, was the fact of they just buried that finish that they've put over really well up until this point. Just for Mox to
look like garbage.
Yeah, so the second he locked it in, I was like, well, he's not going to win with it, so what the fuck? And it was just... So outside of that, though, a good match, good winner. We have Moxley challenging Jericho as the top match on Revolution. Jericho confirms that to close out the show, basically. And so they did a good job building to this point. We have, 3 more weeks before the pay-per-view?
Is that right?
3 or 4, I think. No, it's later in February, isn't it? Yeah, so probably about a month. We're about a month out still from the pay-per-view. Decent amount of time to continue building up all of these feuds, but...
Yeah. I don't know. I thought this was like an overall really solid show. Just worked. A lot of stuff in it made sense. We didn't get a lot of hokey nonsense. So I was into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think, or I would have to assume that maybe the Dark, we were talking about them utilizing what matches they'll utilize for Dark. They also have matches just from the whole cruise that they could utilize. You know, they were running shows, I think, for 3 days on the cruise. So I would imagine they've got plenty of different things they could utilize. And I would hope that they would use some of those matches because I would like to see some of that. I think they had a 6-man with the Elite taking on a team and other shit like that. So that would be great Do you know if the ratings did come out yet, or are we still waiting on those?
Well, I saw them posted, but I don't see a source for them. I can read them off anyways.
Oh, no, don't do that. If Alvarez hasn't posted them, because he always posts them.
Yeah, so. I just saw the thread on it, so I don't know. They didn't source it, though.
Sounds sketch. But I'll go ahead and take a quick look to see if I can find it on the site. Oh, yeah, I found it. So we're looking at about 871,000 for AEW last week. So an apparent drop. You can easily attribute that to it being a tape show, people getting the results beforehand, people not being totally as interested in a show that was taped. It was also notable that crowd, you could tell that it was a smaller crowd. It felt like a different vibe. And it wasn't a bad thing, but I don't necessarily think that it was the best way to do it. And I almost was bummed that they had already announced that they were going to do it again next year, because it wasn't just apparent to me. Like, my girlfriend, who's not big into AEW, she was like, this feels like a house show. And I was like, you're right.
I didn't mind it, though. I thought for a special event, it was pretty cool that they were just on a cruise ship.
I super agree with you, but then I say put it on, like, the BR Live thing, do what you did with Fyter Fest, and that would have been a perfect gimmick, I think. You'd tape something like that, put it on BR Live for people to get for free or to pay for or whatever, and you utilize it for that instead of utilizing it for an episode of your weekly television series that millions of people could change the channel and see this. They're like, what the fuck? Like, honestly, my thought was, like, it would be like if you think it's some weird reality TV show from TLC. You know what I'm talking about? Like, with the midget wrestling and stuff, and, like, they're just then you have the final episode where the people are trying to show off their wrestling, and it's a crowd, because it's obviously not a WWE production, but it's a smaller production. And so I think that hurt this week's episode alone. And I know a lot of people will look at it, on the other hand, the same way as you do. Well, it's a cool, different venue, and it was really nice to see something cool and different like that. It would just be way nicer if you had thousands of people on the outside of the inner fans that you had right there. So that's my only takeaway from that.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, nonetheless, a decent episode of Dynamite. They've got a solid card laid out for us next week, so we have that to look forward to. We got to talk about the ratings, so that's nice. It's cool to always have the numbers in on this episode and not have to wait to cover them until Monday's episode. Anything else you'd like to add, AJ, as we wrap things up here?
Nothing I can think of.
Well, that pretty much wraps everything up for us on this week's episode of the All Elite Podcast. AJ, you want to go ahead and plug your social media?
You can follow me on Twitter at BigMatchAJ, and you can follow me on Instagram at AJTheFitzy.
And as always, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at All Elite Podcast. You can check us out on Instagram at All Elite Everything. And you can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/All Elite Pod. And you can always catch me on social media at All Elite Andy. I'm always actually usually posting on our actual on the podcast account, but you can sometimes catch me on my regular Twitter as well. Thanks, as always, for the support, for always tuning in, giving us feedback. Or sorry for the shorter episode this week. AJ has to get back to grading his papers. I've got some papers to work on myself. Not grading them, but writing them. So that really wraps everything up for us this week. Thank you for the support. Until next week, see ya.
Bye.